In 42 years on this bench, I have seen just about everything a courtroom can hold. I have seen men cry. I have seen men lie. I have seen the proud get humbled and the humble get lifted up. But every once in a while, maybe a handful of times in an entire career, a case walks through that door that reminds you exactly why you became a judge in the first place. This is one of those cases, and I need you to hear every single word of it. I always say that justice is not just a word on a wall. It is a living thing. It breathes, it feels. It bends when it needs to bend, and it stands firm when it has no other choice. Most people who watch this show think every case is simple. Speeding ticket, pay the fine, go home. But the truth is, every single case that comes before me carries a whole human life behind it, a whole story. And if you are not willing to listen to that story, you have no business wearing the robe. My father taught me that. He said, Frank, before you judge a man, make sure you understand his walk. I have never forgotten that, and on the morning of case number 2024 TFC 08817, those words saved two men in very different ways. Now, before I tell you how this morning unfolded, I need to know something. Are you the kind of person who believes that there is still good in the world? Because if you are going to want to subscribe to this channel right now. Hit that notification bell and stay with me. Because what happens in this courtroom today is going to stay with you for a very long time. I promise you that. It was a Tuesday, February 20th, 2024. The kind of cold Providence morning where your breath fogs up the moment you step outside. I had arrived at Providence Municipal Court at 7:48 a.m. My clerk, Maria Santos, had already organized the docket. 12 cases on the list, mostly routine, traffic violations, a couple of minor misdemeanors. I had my coffee, I had my robe, I was ready. What I was not ready for was the collision of two completely different worlds that was about to happen right in front of me. The first case called that morning was case number 2024 TFC 08812. The defendant stepped through the door and I saw him before his name was even announced. You get a feel for people after 4 decades in this business. You learn to read a room. And this young man, he walked in like the room was lucky to have him. He was 26 years old. His name was Marcus Holloway, 6 feet tall, well-built, the kind of young man who had probably never heard the word no in his life and had no intention of hearing it today either. He was wearing Gucci loafers, the kind that cost more than most people's monthly rent. His belt was a chocolate brown Hermes with a gold H-buckle. I know what an Hermes belt looks like because a dear friend once received one as a gift and showed it to me. That belt cost over $900. His watch was a Rolex Daytona in stainless steel. His suit jacket was custom, I could tell by the fit. His shirt was open at the collar because naturally a tie would have been too much effort for a court appearance. He sat down in the defendant's chair and he looked around my courtroom the way a tourist looks at a museum. Mildly interested, not impressed. He pulled out his phone and actually checked it before I could say a word. My bailiff, Officer James Reyes, badge number 4471, had to ask him twice to put it away. Marcus Holloway did so slowly, deliberately slowly, like it was a favor he was doing us. The charge was straightforward. On February 14th, Valentine's Day, at 11:18 p.m., Marcus Holloway was clocked driving his 2023 yellow Lamborghini Huracan Aveo at 73 miles per hour in a 35-mile-per-hour zone on Broad Street in Providence, Rhode Island. That is more than double the speed limit. The officer who issued the citation was Officer Patricia Nguyen, badge number 3892, a 7-year veteran of the Providence Police Department. She was thorough. Her report was clean and precise, laser radar reading confirmed, dash cam footage confirmed, no ambiguity whatsoever. I looked at Marcus and I asked him how he wished to plead. He leaned forward, put both hands on the table, and he smiled. Not a nervous smile, not a respectful smile, a smile that told me he thought this was going to be over in about 4 minutes. He said, "Your Honor, I plead not guilty. And honestly, I think there's been a mistake." I said, "A mistake?" He said, "Yes, sir. I'm pretty sure that radar was faulty. I was definitely not doing 73. I looked at the radar certification records Officer Nguyen had submitted, calibrated December 2023, 48 days before the stop. Perfectly valid." I told Marcus that. His smile did not move. It stayed right there on his face like it was painted on. And something about that smile made a small, quiet alarm go off somewhere in the back of my mind. Now here is where I need to pause for just a moment. Because right here, right now, in this exact spot in the story, I want to issue a challenge. If you think you already know how a judge is supposed to handle a case like this, a rich young man with a fast car and a smug smile, I dare you to keep watching, because I promise you, what this young man did next, what he said next, what we discovered next, went so far beyond a simple speeding ticket that by the time this morning was over, there were people in my courtroom who were absolutely speechless. Subscribe if you haven't already, because you are going to want to see where this goes. My clerk announced the second case of the morning at approximately 8:04 a.m., case number 2024 TFC 08817. And the man who walked through that door could not have been more different from Marcus Holloway if someone had written them both as characters in a novel specifically to contrast with each other. The man who walked in was Harold Jennings, 96 years old. 96. He walked slowly, with a wooden cane that had a slight curve at the handle, worn smooth from years of use. He was wearing a brown cardigan sweater over a white collared shirt. His slacks were pressed. He had a small American flag pin on his left lapel. His white hair was neatly combed. His hands, when he rested them on the table in front of him, were the hands of a man who had worked his entire life, lined and weathered and honest. I learned later from his file that Harold Jennings was born on March 3, 1928, in Cranston, Rhode Island. He had enlisted in the United States Navy at the age of 17 in 1945. He served in the Pacific Theater in the final months of World War II. He came home, married his wife Dorothy in 1949, built a house with his own hands in North Providence, and spent 41 years working as an electrician for the city of Providence. He raised 3 children. He outlived his wife Dorothy, who passed away from pancreatic cancer in August of 2016. He still lived alone in that same house he built. At 96 years old, alone, Harold Jennings had also been cited for speeding on February 14th, the same night as Marcus Holloway as it happened. At 11:23 p.m., Harold was driving his 1987 Buick LeSabre, a car that is older than many of the officers on the force, at 52 miles per hour in a 35-mile-per-hour zone on Chalkstone Avenue. The officer who pulled him over was Officer Daniel Torres, badge number 5104, a 4-year veteran. Officer Torres was respectful in his report. He noted that the defendant was elderly and appeared distressed. But the law is the law, and he issued the citation as required. Now, I had 2 cases. I had two speeding violations. Same night, different worlds. Marcus Holloway, 26, in a Lamborghini, moving at 73 miles per hour, smiling in my courtroom like he was already somewhere better. And Harold Jennings, 96, in a 1987 Buick, moving at 52 miles per hour, sitting in front of me with trembling hands and a flag pin on his chest. My job, my sacred job, was to treat both cases with the same eyes, but I am a human being before I am a judge, and every human being in that room could feel the difference between these 2 men. I turned back to Marcus Holloway first because his case had come up before Harold's, and that is how we run this court. I began going through the evidence. Officer Nguyen's dash cam footage had been submitted and queued up on the courtroom monitor. I asked the officer to describe what she had observed. She stepped forward calmly and said, "Your Honor, at 11:18 p.m. on February 14th, I was stationed at the intersection of Broad Street and Elmwood Avenue conducting routine speed enforcement. My laser unit recorded the defendant's vehicle at 73 miles per hour. The vehicle was a yellow 2023 Lamborghini Huracan. I activated my lights. The vehicle continued for approximately 400 feet before pulling over." She paused. Then she said, "The defendant was calm when I approached. He seemed to find the situation amusing. I looked at Marcus. He shrugged. He actually shrugged his shoulders at me. I said, 'Mr. Holloway, is that your response to Officer Nguyen's testimony?' A shrug. He said, 'Your Honor, with respect, I wasn't doing anything that people don't do every day on that road. I just happen to have a car that's more noticeable than most.' I said, 73 and a 35 is not a judgment call, Mr. Holloway. It is double the posted limit. He said, "Your Honor, I know you're a busy man, and I'm sure there are more important things." Yeah, he stopped himself, but he didn't stop quickly enough. I said, "Finish that sentence." He looked at me. For the first time, the smile flickered, just for a moment. Then he said, "I just mean, this is a minor situation. I can pay whatever the fine is, and we can all move on." I leaned forward in my chair. I said, "You can pay whatever the fine is." He nodded. "Yes, sir." I said, "Let me tell you something, Mr. Holloway. This courtroom is not a drive-through window. You do not pay and drive away. You stand here and you answer for what you did. That is how this works." The room was quiet, and then my clerk handed me something, a printout that Officer Nguyen had included with her submission. She had done her homework. Before coming to court that morning, she had run a full check on the vehicle registration, the driver's license status, and, this is the part I was not expecting, she had done something that officers increasingly do now as part of their case preparation. She had done a brief review of publicly available social media, and what she found, let me tell you, changed the entire complexion of that morning. Now here is the part where this story takes a turn that nobody in that courtroom saw coming. And I want you to stay right here with me because I know you're curious. I know you're wondering what Officer Nguyen found. And I'm about to tell you everything. But first, drop a comment right now and tell me this. When a rich young man stands in front of you with designer clothes and a $300,000 car, do you think he's learned anything about humility? Drop your answer below. Because in about 60 seconds, you are going to see exactly what entitlement looks like when it runs out of room to hide. At 9:22 p.m. on the night of February 13th, the night before the traffic stop, Marcus Holloway had posted a video on his Instagram account, a Marcus Lives Fast, which at the time had 47,300 followers. The video, posted from the parking garage of a downtown Providence nightclub, showed Marcus behind the wheel of his yellow Lamborghini. He was holding up what appeared to be a glass of champagne with one hand. He looked directly into the camera and said, and I am quoting from the transcript Officer Nguyen provided, "About to hit Broad Street. Let's see if these Providence cops can keep up. 60 and a 35. That's Tuesday energy. What's Valentine's Day energy look like?" He then laughed and the video cut off. That video had 4,200 views, 318 likes, and 47 comments before Officer Nguyen flagged it. Several of those comments were from followers cheering him on. One comment, posted by someone with the handle Aura Tyler HNPVD, said, "And I want you to pay attention to this, and bro, you're literally going to catch a case, LOL." Marcus had replied with a laughing emoji. I watched that video in my courtroom. The room was absolutely still. I looked at Marcus Holloway. For the first time that morning, he was not smiling. I said, "Is this your account?" He said quietly, "Yes, Your Honor." I said, "Is that you in the video?" He said, "Yes, Your Honor." I said, "Is that a glass of alcohol you're holding while seated in the driver's seat of a running vehicle?" The color drained from his face. He said, It was just for the camera, Your Honor. I wasn't actually..." I said, "Mr. Holloway, think very carefully before you speak." Because here is what Officer Nguyen had also discovered. When she ran Marcus Holloway's record that morning, she found two things that had not been on the initial citation because they required deeper system access. First, Marcus Holloway's driver's license had been suspended 4 months earlier, in October of 2023, for an unpaid fine related to a reckless driving charge in Warwick, Rhode Island. He had been driving that Lamborghini illegally. Second, and this is the part that brought a federal investigator into my courtroom that very morning, Marcus Holloway was under active investigation by the Rhode Island State Police Case Reference RI 2023-4471 for a pattern of street racing events that had been organized through a private group chat and had resulted in 2 separate property damage incidents and 1 minor injury to a pedestrian on Route 146 back in November. The investigator, Special Agent Carla Dominguez from the State Police Major Crimes Unit, had been notified the moment Officer Nguyen's report was submitted to the system, and at 8:31 a.m., while Marcus Holloway was sitting in my courtroom trying to look relaxed, Agent Dominguez walked through the door. Marcus turned around when the door opened, And when he saw Agent Dominguez, and when he saw the badge and the expression on her face, that smile did not just flicker, it disappeared entirely, like someone had turned a switch. But before Agent Dominguez addressed the court, something happened that I will never forget for the rest of my life. Because it was at approximately 8:44 a.m. that I turned my attention to Harold Jennings, and everything I had just been feeling, the controlled frustration, the professional calm, it gave way to something entirely different. Harold Jennings looked up at me with eyes that were tired and red from crying, and he said in the softest voice I had heard in a very long time, "Your Honor, I am deeply sorry for breaking the law. I know I was going too fast. I know that was wrong. I just needed to get to my boy." I said, "Mr. Jennings, tell me what happened that night." He took a breath. He steadied himself with both hands on the table. And he said, "My son Robert, he is 71 years old. He lives over on Mount Pleasant Avenue. He called me at 11:09 p.m. He could barely speak. He said, 'Dad, something is wrong. My chest, I can't breathe.' Robert lives alone. His wife passed 2 years ago. I am all he has close by. I got in my car." He paused. "I know I should have called 911 first. I did call 911. I called from the car while I was driving. But I needed to be there. I needed him to hear my voice. I have been his father for 71 years, and I was not going to sit in my house waiting." I had to take a moment. I took a breath. I said, "Mr. Jennings, how did Robert turn out to be?" Harold's chin trembled. He said, "He had a heart attack, Your Honor. They got him in time. He is still at Rhode Island Hospital, room 412. I was there all night. I came here this morning because I respect the law and I respect this court, and I did not want to miss my court date." He looked directly at me. I knew I was wrong to speed. Even with what I was going through, the law is the law. I wanted to come here and answer for it. 42 years, and that moment, Harold Jennings, 96 years old, WW2 Navy veteran, a man who had served his country, buried his wife, built his own house, and driven 17 blocks at 52 miles per hour on Valentine's night to get to his dying son. That man sitting in front of me apologizing to my court. I'm telling you, I had to look down at my notes for a moment just to compose myself. Now let me ask you something, and I mean this sincerely. If you are still watching this right now, you are part of a community of people who believe in something. You believe that the law should be human. You believe that a courtroom should have a heart. Take 2 seconds right now and like this video. Let the world know that people who believe in real justice still exist, because the next part of this story is something every single one of you needs to witness. Let me tell you what happened when Marcus Holloway's father walked through that door, because at 8:52 a.m., Councilman Gerald Holloway, yes, Ward 4, Providence City, Councilman Gerald Holloway entered my courtroom. He had been called by his son moments earlier, the one brief phone call I had allowed Marcus to make. Gerald Holloway was a big man, silver-haired, well-dressed in a navy blue suit. I knew Gerald. Not well, but I knew him. He was a man of standing in this city, and I want to be clear, I treated him exactly as I would treat anyone else who walked through that door, because in this courtroom a councilman's father is not a councilman. He is a father, and that is all. Gerald Holloway looked at his son. And the expression on his face was not the expression of a powerful man coming to rescue his child. It was the expression of a man who was deeply, profoundly ashamed. He sat down in the gallery and he did not say a word. He clasped his hands in his lap and he looked at the floor. I addressed Marcus directly. I said, "Mr. Holloway, let me tell you what we have established this morning. You were recorded driving a vehicle at 73 miles per hour in a 35-mile-per-hour zone. Your license was suspended at the time of that driving. You posted a social media video prior to that drive indicating your intention to speed while in possession of an alcoholic beverage behind the wheel of a running vehicle. And you are currently under active investigation by the Rhode Island State Police in connection with organized street racing events that resulted in property damage and the physical injury of at least one civilian. That is not a speeding ticket, Mr. Holloway. That is a pattern. That is a choice. That is who you have decided to be." Marcus said nothing. Agent Dominguez stepped forward and confirmed that additional charges would be forthcoming through the state police process. I then turned to the matter of what I could address in my court that morning. I looked at Gerald Holloway in the gallery. I said, "Councilman, I am not going to pretend I don't see you, and I am not going to pretend this is easy for you, but I will tell you this. The best thing you ever did for your son was not the car you bought him or the life you gave him. The best thing you can do for him now is let this court do its job, because if he doesn't learn this lesson today, in this room, the next time someone could get killed." Gerald Holloway looked up at me. His jaw was tight, his eyes were wet. He nodded once, just once, and he said, "Yes, Your Honor." Marcus was looking at his father, and whatever wall he had built around himself that morning, whatever armor he had walked in wearing, it cracked right down the middle in that moment. I found Marcus Holloway guilty of operating a motor vehicle with a suspended license, a violation that carries mandatory escalating consequences under Rhode Island General Law 31-11-18.1. The speeding violation was documented and fined at the maximum allowable level for double-limit speeding, a fine of $500, which I knew meant nothing to this young man financially, but that was not the point. The point was what came next. I sentenced Marcus Holloway to 120 hours of community service, and I was specific about where those hours were to be served. I said, "Mr. Holloway, you will complete every one of those hours at Rhode Island Hospital. You will work in patient transport. You will push wheelchairs. You will carry bags. You will hold doors. You will be of service to people who are fighting for their lives, people who did nothing to deserve their suffering. And every time you walk those hallways, I want you to think about the people your recklessness could have taken from this world. I want you to understand what a hospital waiting room feels like at 11:30 at night when someone you love is on the other side of those doors." I paused. Then I said, "Room 412, Mr. Holloway. Remember that room number." Marcus looked at me. He knew exactly what I meant, and for the first time all morning, he dropped his head. No smile, no shrug. Just a young man sitting in a quiet courtroom, beginning, perhaps for the very first time, to understand the weight of the life he had been throwing away. Then I turned to Harold Jennings. I looked at this man, this 96-year-old man with his cane and his flag pin and his pressed brown cardigan, this man who had served his country in the Pacific Ocean when he was barely old enough to shave, this man who had built a home and a family and a life and was still, at 96, getting up and driving to his son in the middle of the night when that son called out in fear. I said, "Mr. Jennings." He looked up at me. I said, "I have been doing this for a long time, and in all those years, I have never once dismissed a speeding citation without some deliberation. I take the law seriously. I believe in it. But the law was written by human beings, and human beings wrote it to serve justice. And justice, real justice, is not served by fining a 96-year-old Navy veteran for driving to his sick son in the middle of the night." I said, "Mr. Jennings, case dismissed. All charges dismissed. No fine. No record." The courtroom, and we had about 40 people in the gallery that morning, erupted. Not in loud cheering. It was softer than that. It was a kind of collective exhale, the sound people make when they feel something deeply, when something confirms what they believe about the world. Harold Jennings sat very still for a moment. Then he pressed both hands flat on the table and he pushed himself up slowly to his feet. He looked at me and he said, "Thank you, Your Honor. I am going to go see my boy now." And he turned and he walked back through that courtroom, slowly, with his cane, one careful step at a time, and every single person in that room watched him go. Officer Torres, who had written the citation, was standing near the back. He applauded. And then, one by one, the rest of the gallery joined him. Harold Jennings walked out of Providence Municipal Court on the morning of February 20th, 2024, to a standing ovation, at 96 years old. I did not try to stop it. Some moments are bigger than protocol. Now, if you've made it this far in this video, I want you to know something. You are exactly the kind of person I want in this community. You stayed. You listened. You cared about both of these men, even the one who made you angry, because that is what real people do. Take 5 seconds right now. Subscribe if you haven't. Leave a comment telling me what Harold Jennings made you feel today. Share this with someone who needs to be reminded that the world still has good in it. And do not go anywhere because the next story coming to this channel involves a decorated firefighter, a $30 million real estate fraud, and a courtroom moment so powerful that 3 of my bailiffs said they had never seen anything like it in their careers. You do not want to miss that one. I am Judge Frank Caprio, and I will see you in the next case. Now let me close with this, because I think it needs to be said. Every day I put on this robe, I try to remember 2 things. I try to remember that the law is a structure, a necessary and important structure that holds civilization together. And I try to remember that inside that structure there are human beings, real people, with real lives, with children they love and parents they miss and wars they fought and houses they built with their own hands. The law must serve those people, not the other way around. Marcus Holloway walked into my courtroom that morning wearing $900 on his waist and nearly $300,000 in his parking spot and not $1 of genuine self-reflection in his heart. Harold Jennings walked in wearing a brown cardigan and a flag pin that cost him nothing and carried everything. And in the end, the courtroom knew exactly what it was looking at. You do not need a title or a suit or a Lamborghini to have dignity. You need only to have lived an honest life and loved the people in it with everything you have. That is what Harold Jennings showed us. That is what I think about when people ask me why I have spent 42 years in a courtroom. It is for the Harold Jenningses of the world, every single one of them. My father once told me, "Frank, when you are sitting in that chair, God is watching over your shoulder." I believe that. I have always believed that. And on the morning of February 20th, 2024, I think even the most skeptical person in that gallery would have had a hard time arguing with him. Justice found its way. It usually does if you let it. Thank you for watching. Thank you for caring. Thank you for being the kind of person who spends time in a courtroom, even a virtual one, because you still believe that fairness matters and that every human life has value. This community of ours, everyone watching, everyone who has ever left a comment or shared a story or simply felt something while watching these cases, you are the reason I keep telling these stories. Please like, subscribe, and share this with someone today. And for the next video, I have one word for you, firefighter. That is all I will say. Stay close. I will see you very soon.